Hey everyone, Cass here to talk about Teyvat's tragically unlucky yet resiliently optimistic best boy, Bennett. I first want to start by saying that this is not an in-depth guide, but more of just an overview and why I think everyone should have Bennett on their roster. And with him being on the current banner, now is the time to get him and or his constellations if you can. I do think it's a little ironic that according to his lore, Bennett is super unlucky and nobody wants to be in Benny's adventure team. But gameplay-wise, players are lucky to have him on their team, but that kind of just adds to his charm. And if you really think about it, his kit is lore accurate too. Nobody wants to be on his adventure team, so he's a self-sufficient unit, being a whole team all by himself. He deals damage, applies pyro, buffs attack, and heals. Bennett is known as being arguably the best support unit in the game. That being said, I first want to talk about why he's such an amazing support. So support units in Genshin are generally slotted into a team for their utility by providing damage mitigation and or healing, energy regeneration for the team, or buffing your main DPS and or team's overall damage. Now, not only does Bennett do all of these things, but he does them all incredibly well. And on top of all that, he's super easy to build, even at low AR. He fits into almost any team comp, and he's very free to play friendly, making him a great asset for anyone's account. Bennett's tap elemental skill is on a very short cooldown. It deals pyro damage, which applies strong pyro, and generates particles that can be absorbed by Bennett himself or funneled into other units, which is particularly useful when paired with energy-hungry units like Xiangling. His hold skill is a charged up version, but it takes more time, it has a longer cooldown, and has a knockback, so just tapping it is typically how you'd want to use it efficiently, especially since both versions generate the same amount of particles. His burst provides one of, if not the strongest attack buffs in the game, as well as significant healing to anyone standing in its area of effect. The attack buff also gets snapshotted by many other characters' own bursts, meaning the buff persists on their ability if they leave the area or field altogether, or if the duration of Bennett's burst expires before theirs does. So when leveling his talents, first and foremost you want to prioritize his burst. Get that leveled as high as you can, and then you can level his skill. Stopping at level 6 if you want, you can go higher as well because it does do decent damage, and you will be using it a lot. His autos can be left alone altogether, or you can level them if you feel like it, but for a pure support you don't have to at all. For artifacts, it's incredibly simple. All he needs are any 4 Noblesse Oblige pieces with enough energy recharge to use his burst off cooldown. They can have literally any main stat. All you need to look for is energy recharge. You can run a Hydro Damage Goblet as long as it has ER and he'll still be broken. The amount of ER can vary based on your team comp, like if you're using him with Raiden, but aim for at least 200 and you're golden. Early AR sets like 2-piece Exile, 2-piece Scholar, and later 2-piece Emblem can help with his energy needs until you can get a full Noblesse set. And the great thing about the Noblesse artifacts is that they're resin efficient, as you can get them from AR rewards and the Artifact Strongbox. Other than energy recharge, like I said, the other stats don't really matter. His healing scales on his HP, so you can look for that if you want more healing. You don't really need a healing bonus circlet unless you really want extra healing or if that's what you have, because even without investing too much, Bennett heals so much so fast that as long as you have enough ER, you can build him for damage, which he's no slouch at either, or even just have random main stats and he'll still heal enough. Also, the stats on his artifacts don't affect the buff from his burst. As you can see, I haven't even fully leveled the artifacts I have on him because he already provides so much with them as is, I haven't felt the need to, although I will eventually. Since Bennett's buff scales on his base attack, as far as weapons go, whatever you have that's available that has the highest base attack will work. Some of his best options being swords like the Aquila Favonia and the Ali Flash, as it has the highest base attack of any 4-star sword, but it is a limited weapon, so if you don't have it, the prototype Roundcore is a perfect free-to-play option as it has a high base attack and everyone gets one as an adventure rank reward. Now, even though Bennett requires high energy recharge, I generally avoid energy recharge weapons since they typically have a lower base attack unless you're really having a hard time meeting his energy needs. The only exception being the Skyward Blade if you happen to get it, as it has both energy recharge and a high base attack since it's a 5-star weapon. That being said, his best weapon for you will pretty much just depend on what you have. Bennett's already great at C0, but his constellations make him progressively better, and since they're quite attainable, they're worth getting. His first constellation is especially useful as it removes the HP restriction on the buff from his burst, and increases the attack buff it provides. C2 increases his energy recharge by 30% when his HP falls below 70%. His third and fifth constellations increase the level of his skill and burst respectively, so C5 is the big one since it increases the level of his burst, therefore increasing the amount of attack the buff from his burst provides. And his fourth constellation adds an extra attack to his hold E skill, which I honestly never use because I only tap his skill, but it can be something to play around with. And now the question that divides the internet: to activate his C6 or not. Now, although I think the attitude towards this is shifting, it's still a lingering issue. So if you're not familiar, Bennett's C6 grants a 15% pyro damage bonus to any character within the area of effect of his burst, as well as infusing sword, claymore, and polearm users' attacks with pyro. Meaning, if you have his C6 activated and use his burst, then switch to a sword, claymore, or polearm damage dealer, they will deal pyro damage with their normal and charged attacks instead of physical damage. So if you're debating whether or not you should activate his C6, or maybe you already have, maybe you didn't realize what it does, maybe you regret it, I'm gonna tell you something super important. It does not matter. As much as it might cause some undesirable reactions in certain team comps, it is not going to ruin your account like some people make it sound like it will. Sure, it can potentially make Bennett a little less flexible as to what teams he's really useful in, but it really only negatively affects characters who want to only deal physical damage, like Eula and Razor, or if you're running physical Keqing or Zhongli. That being said though, it can create new team rotations and playstyles. For example, you can turn a non-pyro unit into a temporary pyro DPS in certain situations. Some people even C6 him on purpose with certain factors in mind, like if they main a pyro DPS. And with Dendro coming soon, there might be some benefits there with the reactions it brings with it. So if you want to C6 him, go right ahead. It's your account and your preference. It doesn't affect anyone but you. And if you have C6 Bennett and you wish you hadn't activated, don't look at it that way. Look at it as an opportunity to experiment with different ideas. You can make him work either way. I haven't activated my Bennett C6 yet, but not because I think it'll ruin him. I just don't have it in me to commit to it, at least not yet. As far as teams go, Bennett really can be slotted into almost any team comp. But some examples include the national team and its variants, and of course he and Jean are the two necessary components for Sunfire teams. You can run mono pyro teams, double geo double pyro teams, soup teams. As well, pretty much anytime you run Xiangling, you'd probably want to pair her with Bennett as she relies on him to funnel energy particles to her, and her Pyronado snapshots his burst. Be mindful of pairing him with someone like Razor, because when you use them together, their abilities can proc overload, and if you're not careful, it might cause you to have to chase smaller enemies that get knocked back because of it. That doesn't mean you can't run them together, it's just something to keep in mind. And as I mentioned earlier, he heals a lot and really fast, so using him with Hu Tao isn't technically ideal because she wants to stay at low HP to get the buff from her own kit, but they can also still be run together if you want, you just have to adjust. Other than that, in most cases, when you need a fourth team member, you can just throw Bennett in and call it a day. As for whether or not he's future-proof, with the addition of Yelan, who scales entirely off HP and doesn't benefit from Bennett's buff at all, there might be a shift towards adding more characters whose kits have alternative scalings other than just attack. So in the future, we might have more characters who don't make use of Bennett's buff. This might sound like an indirect nerf to his versatility, but I personally see this as a good thing, because it means we might have more options to create a team that doesn't need him at all. Whereas right now, it can really suck wanting him to be on both of your Abyss teams. Being able to have a team that he's not needed in will just free him up for the other one. So I don't think having more characters who don't need him is ever going to be a problem, and he will continue to be a top tier support in future content. And the only way he can be power crept is if they release a 5-star who does all the same things Bennett does, but better. And realistically, one Bennett is broken already, so who wouldn't want two? Anyway, I hope I provided some decent information about our dear Benny boy, and if you don't have him yet and you're pulling on the current banner, I wish you luck and all the best on your fantastic voyage. Let me know in the comments below if you have Bennett, and if you already have or plan to C6 him, I'd love to know. Thank you so much for watching, like and subscribe for more videos to come. Also come hang out with me on Twitch where I stream a few nights a week, and I will see you next time.